where I thought you were going to go with it is the prosecutor crossing Joseph, the defendant, and as he's walking him through the lying stuff at each stage. I mean, it was, I know just our last movie we did was Witness for the Prosecution, and you lied, and you lied, and you lied. I was ready for this prosecutor to say, I'm surprised the testament didn't leak from your hands.
It was very similar.
And again, you lied.
Which was a lie.
Today's Movie Verdicts episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search specializes in helping small law firms in Texas hire lawyers and build great teams. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Okay, so we recorded this just before the coronavirus took over most of our lives. And so if you haven't yet seen the movie Marshall, you might have some extra time on your hands to do so. So if you haven't seen it yet, please go back, watch it, and then listen to this episode. In all seriousness, I hope each and every one of you are staying safe and healthy and taking proper precautions and doing everything that our medical professionals are telling us to do right now. We just want to say we're with you, and we pray for you and your family and everyone around the world as we deal with this global health crisis, and hope that we can get through it here together. And we hope that through this show and the future episodes that we'll do of these Movie Verdicts episodes and all our other podcasts, that we can help provide some momentary relief from the craziness that's going on around. So we thank you that you are with us. You want me to try this case? No, I need you to try this case. The Lord commanded Moses to solicit his brother's help. He shall be your mouth, and you shall be his God. It's time for Marshall.
I only represent innocent people, people accused because of their race. That's my mission.
I never touched that woman.
I need a partner who the jury can relate to.
Sam Friedman.
Good to meet you, Sam. Hey, give me a hand with these, would you?
What have you got in here? Cement?
Guns. Books, Mr. Friedman.
You just sweep through town, stirring up all kinds of ugliness. My life is on the line here.
Hey, Attorney Friedman, hold on a minute.
What do you want?
You're one of us now, Sam.
A real fighter.
Step away, you can't take the heat on the battleground.
Neither of them have been telling us the truth.
He attacked me.
I'd advise him to accept the deal.
You lied in a sworn statement. Why would you do that?
Why'd I lie? Because the truth gets me killed.
You can't deny me now. Tunnel vision.
If you want freedom,
on a mission.
you're gonna have to fight for it.
Stop me now.
The only way to get through a bigot's door was to break it down.
You can't stop me now.
Here we go. Robert Callahan, Baylor Law School's proudest, finest. Robert Callahan. You asked for it. You got it.
Can we just... Okay, just post. We'll do it in post. I just need you to work on it, okay? Baylor Law School's finest, okay? You're making an effort. I appreciate that.
Oh, man.
You. Okay. Yeah. What's up?
Hey, man. Daniel here with you, Varsity Search, and we are going to be talking about Marshall. And I'm excited about this one. And, you know, if for no other reason, then we're sitting here. It's Monday night. It's March 2nd. And for the conversation, I think in the last episode, or maybe the one before it, or maybe both, actually, where we talked about the short month of February.
Yes.
And so here we go. We're extending in February.
It's great. And then by the time that this airs, we're going to be well into March.
And so we are extending.
I don't know what to do with it.
Well into March.
Yeah,
with this special presentation.
Special presentation. It reminds me of the Bible verse where the Pharisees go to Jesus like, "Teacher, is it lawful to talk about a movie with a black lawyer in the month of March?"
That's right. This is like, can you say Happy New Year in February? Can you do a Black History Month movie podcast episode in March? I think the answer is yes to both.
All right.
So we are taking some liberties and extending into March. I like it.
It's March Madness.
It's March Madness. So welcome everybody. We are excited to be here and to talk about this movie. And a couple of things, one is this is obviously the most recent movie that we've done. I mean, this is 2017. We've done a couple of movies from the 90s, obviously last time one from the 50s, and now we're back into present day, although with a movie set in the 40s. So kind of a back and forth in our timeline here. But just to kind of set the stage for this movie. So as I said, Marshall came out in 2017, starring Chadwick Boseman, who is mostly known, I would say, as Black Panther.
The Black Panther.
But also has played a number of biopic films, including Jackie Robinson in 42, and is just a great actor. I'm a fan. And then you have Olaf. I'm sorry, that's Josh Gad. This is one of these guys. So I hope he's a young guy still. I hope his career can continue to grow and become other things than Olaf. But as a person, I'm sure you too, Robert, with little kids, it's hard to separate him, for me at least, from Olaf from Frozen, because the voice is just so noticeable and it stands out so much. But anyway, he plays so Chadwick Boseman plays Thurgood Marshall. Josh Gad plays Sam Friedman, his co-counsel in this. Kate Hudson as the alleged victim, Eleanor Strubing, from Almost Famous, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, obviously a lot of other stuff as well. Sterling K. Brown was also in Black Panther, so double up there, and then also an Emmy winner for his performances in This Is Us, he plays the alleged defendant here, Joseph Spell. And then you've got Dan Stevens playing Lauren Willis, the district attorney, and then James Cromwell playing the judge, who's been in a ton of things, but was nominated for an Oscar in the movie Babe and also in The Green Mile. So it's directed by Reginald Hudlin, who has an interesting career as I was looking at it, because he directed Boomerang with Eddie Murphy back in the 90s, and then House Party as well. So a couple of early 90s movies. And then he did more producing after that, produced Django Unchained, obviously a phenomenal movie with a lot of accolades. And then he actually wrote for 3 years the Black Panther comic book.
Yes.
So he's got a lot of things going on: writing, directing, producing. He's back directing this movie here. I don't know that there's any nice way to say this. This was not a good box office movie. It was made for $10 million and only made $12 million. So it just wasn't seen.
Yeah.
It was not a movie that was seen. It'll be curious. I'll be interested to see if it has a, sometimes movies don't do well at the box office for whatever reason, timing or other things, and then they have a second life in, whether that's on streaming or whether that's in the old days in video rentals or whatever, now it's streaming. But it'll be interesting to see if this is one that has a second life or a new life or whatever, but it just didn't do well at the box office.
Yeah, I think it's on Prime. It's on Prime now.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I didn't see it in the movie theater.
Oh, no. No, I think I didn't either.
Yeah,
so we're right there with everybody else.
Yeah,
You never know. I mean, bad marketing. Who knows? I don't know.
It wasn't marketing for me. It was extremely interesting, but for me, when I've got a profession, as you know, and you do too, which is high stress, fast paced, and I need my movie time to just be zoning out in fiction and just an escape. And so that's not this. Right. And so that it's not an easy hang, which is why I didn't go see it in the movie theater. But I'm glad I saw it. But it was a little difficult. But it was good.
Well, and I want to hear about some of those difficulties. Overarching themes, big thoughts. What stood out to you, Robert?
I love the line in the trailer, which I think is kind of an overall theme towards the end, where he says, the only way to get through a bigot's door is to break it down.
It's a great line. Maybe the line of the movie.
Yeah. And I think that's what the movie is really all about. I'm reading a really interesting book right now, an audiobook by Malcolm Gladwell. It was recommended to me by one of my other lawyer friends. And it's about, it's called Talking to Strangers, and it's all about how we can't read people because we have this inherent bias to believe the best about how people present themselves and who they are, and we will disregard other things. And kind of his point, he uses all these examples. And one of the examples he uses is the Sandusky case, Penn State. Yep. And all the people that just thought, no way, not this coach, no, not these guys. And so it takes. But there were things that showed up that presented doubts, but they weren't enough doubt to overcome the presumption towards believing the best. And so that point kind of resonates when he's talking about changing something. We have these things that we hold on to, and it takes a Mack truck basically hitting us upside the head for us to say, oh, wow, like I had an epiphany. Now I get it. Now I understand Me Too, or now I understand where minorities are coming from when they take the knee, during the national anthem, or now I understand whatever have you. And so this is that same kind of this idea that, like it's not, you're not going to make change gradually. It's got to come with a big Mack truck has to hit you upside the head, sort of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And that reminds me of, and not to step on best lines for later in the show, but since you brought out one of the best ones already, that as you're talking, it reminded me of, I think, one of the other better lines in the movie, which is towards the end when Sam's asking Thurgood, what are you going to do now? You just go on from basically city to city putting out these fires, and he says, it's not the fires I'm trying to put out, it's the fire. Mm-hmm. And just that's to your point. It's the big, bold idea that needs to be knocked out. It's not the individual cases or fires. But I mean, that's the way he's doing it, but that's not ultimately what he's after. Mm-hmm. I thought it would be a good thing because I didn't. I obviously prepared for this and was looking through some of the history of Thurgood Marshall. I'm just going to give a few stats, but anything that you want to layer on top of this, please do so. And we get a little of his bio. It's funny because it's presented as a biopic and whatever, but it really is a very focused and narrow slice because we're not seeing kind of his life,
right? From
where he came from through his prime and then ultimately to the Supreme Court and any of that stuff. I mean, we're seeing one just small piece in a set time case, and he gives us a little of his bio at that point. I mean, obviously the probably most specific was as he's getting to know Sam some, and he's telling him about how he wanted to go to Maryland law school, who had segregation policy. He could not go, so he went to Howard, which was not his first choice, but got a great education there, found a mentor there, graduated first in his class there, and then turned around and sued Maryland and was able to force integration into the University of Maryland Law School via the Maryland Supreme Court. And then we, from that point, learned that he had already at a young age argued before the Supreme Court, which at 32 years old was his first case before the Supreme Court. And he wound up winning 29 out of 32 cases that he argued at the United States Supreme Court, including obviously Brown versus Board of Education, but a number of others. Founded the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund and was its executive director. He was appointed by John F. Kennedy to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and then by Lyndon Johnson to the Supreme Court, and it was the first African American Supreme Court justice. And I wanted to make sure I got this because I think it's just, it's a sign of the times. That vote was 69-11 in the Senate to confirm him, which we could never get that kind of a majority for anybody, any race, any gender, we're just not at a place with the parties and everything else with the way that the court has been politicized lately to get a vote like that. A fascinating trailblazer and a legal giant in every way. And I think it's fun to kind of see him in his prime, it projected in this, and kind of what that looked like, and pre-Supreme Court days as a practicing lawyer. I don't know. Well,
Thurgood Marshall by far is my favorite Supreme Court justice of all time. He is a hero of logic and rhetoric. This was a time where I feel like justices could look at the way that things were, what was wrong, and they could just fix it. And I don't really know how else to articulate that, but there wasn't as much political wrangling. You would think that politics wouldn't play in when you have appointed judges in the Supreme Court, but I think that we are a product of our time. And there was a point where, looking at Brown versus Board of Education, and I listened to the someone reading the opinion. There's really no way around it. I mean, they were looking at an issue that was based on intangibles, and they basically said this is the right thing to do. In fact, the case Brown was argued in the spring of 1953, and the presiding judge stalled the vote on the case until the fall so that they could build a consensus. So they argued the case again in the fall of 1953, and then they had a stronger consensus, and then they were able to publish the opinion. And they wanted to have little or no dissents. So that's also one of the reasons for the stalling. So anyway, love Thurgood Marshall. I had never heard about this story. This was interesting for me because I was listening to some interviews of the actors, and they were talking about how this is sort of in a way, a superhero origin story. This is the origin story of a hero that wears a business suit as opposed to the Black Panthers.
I like that description.
Yeah.
And
this story no one really knew, and it seems. It was really strange to me. I actually went back and did a little research about the case, and it was very accurate. There's only a few changes.
And I've got a couple of things when we get to inadmissible evidence we can talk about. But for the most part, it tracked.
Yeah. And it felt like a trope a little bit because, I feel like we've seen this plot line. Yeah. But at the same time, it was a true story.
True story.
Yeah. And so, and we didn't know how it was going to turn out because it wasn't Brown, versus Board of Education. So, and that was one of the things that Chadwick Boseman said about why he took the role. He took the role. In fact, he didn't want to at first because he didn't think he was light enough because Thurgood Marshall is much lighter skinned. And, but he took the role because in part, actually Thurgood Marshall's family wanted to convince him to take the role on too. But he took the role because it was one where there was some freedom and there was some tension that was built because we didn't know how things were going to end. This story wasn't common, and so Spell's story could be developed. And and so it was really good. So I immensely enjoyed watching it. I also struggled with something that turned out to be apparently also accurate, but just sort of the swagger of Marshall.
Very confident.
Yeah. And it's both the thing that I love and the thing that I struggled with in the movie.
Okay.
First of all, full disclosure, I'm a huge Chadwick Boseman fan. Just he can hardly do any wrong. But I just felt like if it was me in his position, that I would be a little more, I would feel a little bit more oppressed. And so I look at this character and he doesn't feel the pressure of what's happening around him at all. And actually he does, but he doesn't really show it.
Right.
And of course, that's probably a result of, when you're lifting 20 pounds, then 15 pounds doesn't feel like anything.
Yeah.
But it was just, it was almost comical, which made the movie light enough to enjoy it and it not be heavy, too heavy to watch and just be depressing. But at the same time, I found myself like, I can't be like that guy. That's a hero that's beyond. I give me Black Panther. Okay? I can wear the suit and I can do the claws and I can do the flips and all that stuff. But so it was an interesting watch.
Yeah, no, and I think the other, and we'll get into some more of this, but a couple of the other just I would say minor themes too that I took away from it. What were, number one, this came out in the end as well, where he's telling Sam how he learned something by watching him in this case, which was that he needed more people.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it alone.
Can't do it alone.
And so I think that was an important message that came out towards the end. It wasn't really throughout the movie, but it was at the end. It was something that he learned, was that he knew he was the best. That's the way he felt. He knew he was the best, and he knew that every one of these clients would be best served if he was their lawyer. I mean, that even in this case, obviously Sam did a really good job, but it was really he needed Marshall to get the best defense. But he realized that he's not going to be able to do every single one of these. And some of that's he's on the train all the time. His wife's at home having a miscarriage. And they can't. It's tough. And he tries to compartmentalize those. He tries to recognize that he's got multiple very important things pulling on him, and he's feeling the weight of that. But it's at the end when he realizes, I'm going to have to figure out a way to multiply myself. I'm going to have to train up people. And I think the way he said it was that don't even know that they want to do good. Like kind of the Sam character was for him. I need more of you, Sam, which what a compliment at the end of that, obviously. But so that was one. And sort of along the lines, it's just their friendship, their relationship, how it developed over time. Throughout this, it was sort of a forced marriage.
Yeah.
Arranged marriage at the beginning. From the way it all came about was very comical because the crazy brother partner basically signs him up to sign Sam up to get him admitted. And then, Marshall doesn't hesitate to just basically co-opt him as co-counsel on the case, even though he doesn't want it. And but they grow to have a mutual respect and a relationship, friendship by the end, and I think that's neat as well. But no, and then just getting to watch, like I said, even though it's funny because we didn't get to see him argue, and except for I'm going to save that for my favorite scene. I'm not going to skip ahead. Okay. But we don't get to see him really try a case, but we get to kind of get a close sort of sense of his greatness, even though it's through Sam.
Yeah, and even with like you were talking about the delegating and needing to have more attorneys, I was thinking at the time it's sort of like, Aaron and her, and Moses needed both. And there's actually the point in the movie where Marshall is talking to Friedman.
And he uses the line from Exodus.
Yeah. And so it was really good lesson there. And it is true. You just can't do it all yourself. And I was stunned to find, this was in the opening credit of the movie, that Marshall was the only attorney that was on staff for the NAACP nationally.
Yeah. And so at that time, it sounded like, that was sort of the underlying urgency that Marshall had, and that his boss, Walter, I'm not going to get his last name, but had, was that it sounded like a lot of the financial support for the organization had dried up or was drying up, and it was important for them to win this case as much to be able to keep that organization functioning and running, and to the point where they could start to maybe hire more folks, or maybe it was going to go the other way and completely shut down. That's kind of That's the feeling I got from watching it, and the urgency that they had. So you're right. I mean, that he was the only lawyer. They were having to send him all over the country because they couldn't afford another one.
Right.
Not to mention he was the best one, but they couldn't even afford anyone else. And that's why this case was another reason why it was specifically important.
Mm-hmm.
Should we get to the awards?
Yeah.
All right. Best lawyering. What did we see here? We saw a lot of lawyering because we had quite a few courtroom scenes. I think in terms of some of the arguments that we saw, I mean, just from just a few of the ones that stand out to me. I like when Sam is crossing the cop and he walks him through the pebble line. Because part of the whole thing is that somehow Joseph threw rocks at her, which was so weird. And then and he gets him to, the cop to say, that wasn't really a rock, and there weren't any rocks up there, and he dumps out what the sample they had taken from the bridge onto his counsel table. It's a bunch of kind of dust and pebbles. Would you call it a pebble? What would you call it? And then he thought, a pebble.
Yeah.
He kind of tosses it up in the air and catches it, and that's the end of the scene, except for the fact that Marshall gets on him for celebrating.
Yeah.
At the end of that,
yeah.
what are you smiling for?
Yeah. This is.
I think we scored some points there.
Yeah.
This is not a game.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's life is on the line.
Yeah.
But that was pretty good.
I got a candidate for you.
Go for it.
What do you think of the closing argument from the case in Oklahoma that was at the beginning of the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
Lyons, I think, is the actual case that actually happened.
Yeah.
And we can get into that a little bit later.
The city case before he gets on the train to go to Bridgeport.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's that moment where he's giving the closing argument and he's, talking about the officer's got his stick and he's, beating this guy, trying to get a confession out of him, and, all that stuff happening in the courtroom. You can see the people in the back, the black people, sharecroppers and whatnot in the back of the courtroom, just sort of really cheering on Marshall, and as he's just telling one truth after another. And these are all undisputed facts that are all just horrific and gruesome on the part of law enforcement.
Right.
Yeah. That's a candidate.
Absolutely. I think you also have where I thought you were going to go with it is the prosecutor crossing Joseph, the defendant, and as he's walking him through the lying stuff at each stage. I mean, it was I know just our last movie we did was Witness for the Prosecution, and you lied, and you lied, and you lied. And I was ready for this prosecutor to say, I'm surprised the testament didn't leak from your hands.
Yeah, it was very similar.
And again, you lied.
That was a lie.
That was a lie. And so, no, as this prosecutor was going through it, it sounded very similar to that. There were a couple of times, actually. I actually thought Sam sounded a lot like Caffey in A Few Good Men a few times, where he was trying to go after Kendrick and Jessup, and he's going, is it true that you loved him or you wanted him? And he's like,
just throw stuff out there.
Throwing it out there's real argumentative and gets objected to and all that. Yeah. But no, and then Sam's cross of Kate Hudson, of the victim, is another one where it's it's one of these. That's a tight rope to walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we talked about that a little bit with the Lincoln lawyer, where you got the victim on the stand, and you've got to somehow discredit her in some way, shape, or form, but you got to do it without losing the jury.
Right. Yeah, which is just so it's not fair. I mean, that she's lying, but she's up there and she's crying, and what do you do? But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I've got a candidate for you. How about the the moment where Friedman gets gagged by Marshall?
It's a great one.
And then they've set up, you couldn't lie, you couldn't scream, and then
Because of the gag.
Yes.
Mrs. Strubing, This Exhibit I is identical to the gag that he used?
Yes.
Let's just show the jury what he did then. Mrs. Strubing, please instruct Mr. Marshall, if you would.
Judge is ready with the gavel.
The gag was between your lips. Is that correct, Mrs. Strubing?
Yes, that's correct.
Marshall's tying the gag around Sam's mouth now.
Is this about right?
No, it was a bit tighter than that.
How about this, ma'am?
Yes, that's about it.
Now, you could have done that, Mrs. Strubing.
He would have killed me.
Who would have killed you? Your husband?
Objection!
Quiet, Mr. Marshall.
Dare you speak to me?
There was a policeman standing not 3 feet away from you, and still you did not call out for help. Instead, Joseph drove on to the reservoir.
I'm warning you, no
where
speaking.
You bolted from the car because you were ashamed of what you had done with another man, with a colored man.
Objection!
One more word out of you, and I will hold you in contempt.
You were afraid of what your husband would do to you if he found out, afraid that you were pregnant with a colored child.
Objection! This is argument.
Sustained. Jury will disregard.
You jumped into that water. You wanted to end it all.
I was thrown. I was thrown. My hands were tied. He tried to kill me.
Did you order the code red? Turn right in. Seriously, that's what made me think it was. So that scene, there are a couple things going on there that are actually really important. So when Marshall comes up to start to assist Sam in doing that gag demonstration, the judge, who has been, we haven't talked about the judge yet, but the judge has been very difficult, and we could talk about that a little bit more. We should. On Marshall, on Sam, and just kind of prosecutorial friendly, I would say, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And he's right there. You said it. He had his gavel up. The prosecutor's on his feet, about to object. He doesn't ever actually object, but the judge is about to do something to stop it. He doesn't. And it does seem like there is a point where he's starting to kind of realize these guys know what they're doing,
right?
And this, I got to let some of this stuff go. And then also, I think this is the first time during the trial that Marshall speaks.
It's the only time.
He was not allowed to speak. It was the condition upon which the judge was going to allow him, because he's not barred in the state of Connecticut. So he didn't give him just. That's why he's not able to try this case. Is he needs Sam, and so but he did allow him to sit at counsel table. But he couldn't speak, and he speaks here without asking permission, and the judge does not stop him. And not only does he speak when he's trying to make sure he's tying the gag appropriately as the witness is telling him to, but then he starts to question her, and you think maybe the judge will stop him there, and then he does give him a warning, but I mean, he has dramatically softened at that point to Marshall or to the defense, or however you want to describe it. So I thought there were multiple things going on there that were interesting.
Yeah, there feels like a sub theme where about speaking and being heard. And so Marshall is admitted to the bar. I forget how they say it on paper or in writing, but he's not allowed to talk in the courtroom, like you said. Right. And so then this is the first point that he talks in the courtroom. And then later on in the movie, Friedman gives the closing. And so he's speaking for behalf of Spell, the defendant. Marshall's not doing it, which is, its own little thing. But then there's also a point I want to talk about later where there's the objection and the long pregnant pause when Spell's testifying.
Yep, we will definitely get to that.
And so, so it seems like there's this theme about, when do you get to speak, and, are you heard, and are you seen in society, and that kind of a thing. And so, I think that that's a really good start. I love how they just teamed up on her, though. How Marshall starts asking her questions, and then he's, gets right up to the red line. He ducks out, and then Friedman hops in on her and starts, getting the the testimony going to and getting her really angry. And so I love the double team there.
They object to one of the potential jurors during jury selection who basically admits that he's racist, not only to black people, but also to Jews, of which Sam Friedman is. And he objects. Marshall tells him to object. He and tries to get him to be disqualified on not just a peremptory challenge, but for cause. And the prosecutor and the judge basically, rehabilitate him.
Oh my gosh, we're going to talk about that.
Maybe we should just listen to that because that's pretty rough. Let's do that.
I'll be honest with you. I don't like the colored. Seems to me they're always getting into some sort of trouble. I don't think much of Hebrews either.
Excuse me?
Well, you're one of them. I figured.
Thank you for your candor, Mr. Wright. No further questions.
Excuse for cause. Counselor?
Your Honor, we move to have Mr. Wright excused for cause.
On what grounds?
He just admitted he's biased.
Mr. Wright, you're a law-abiding citizen, wouldn't you say?
That's right, Your Honor.
If I instructed you that the law requires that you set aside your bias, would you obey my instruction?
Guess I'd have to.
The challenge for cause is overruled. You may use a peremptory challenge.
Your Honor, with all due respect...
I've made my ruling.
Excused.
Oh my gosh. So...
You want to roll with that?
Yeah. Okay, so that actually happens today. Not about race so much, although it wouldn't surprise me if it is happening in a courtroom in some places for reasons like that. But I have so many times gotten a prospective juror to admit that they have a bias towards law enforcement or they're predisposed to find someone guilty because of news that they've heard about a story or because the person is just the client accused is sitting in the chair where the defendant sits. And the indictment's been read and these are the charges against him, whatever have you. And they will say, yes, I believe that I'm leaning one way or the other and that I wouldn't be able to be a fair and impartial juror. And then because the judge doesn't want to bust the jury panel or because the judge feels the need to hop in the prosecutor's seat, the judge will go through that same little mantra. I mean, almost word for word. I'm going to give you the law in this case. And, are you a law-abiding citizen? You feel like you can... it's too close to home. It's too soon.
All right, let's take a quick break so I can let you know that right now Varsity Search has been retained by a prominent civil litigation firm in Austin to help grow their insurance defense team. So if you or someone you know has at least 3 years of insurance defense experience, I would love to talk to them. You can apply for the job directly on LinkedIn, or you can email me if you want to talk about it, Daniel@varsitysearch.com. Varsity Search, building great teams. All right, let's get back to Marshall.
I think your opening scene sequence with Marshall arguing in the Oklahoma case actually might win this Best Lawyering Award because I think that's a good one.
So I got go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to move on to our next award. If you got one more,
I would say for the movie, it's Friedman in closing. That's who I would give it to.
We can do that, but I'm going to save. I want to say I've got a whole thing on the closing. So
okay, here we go.
So
all right,
I mean, for a different part of a different segment, for sure. All right. We have the Aaron Brockovich Award, which I feel like we haven't been able to give the last couple of times because we haven't had like a paralegal or an investigator, a non-lawyer. This has got to go to a non-lawyer who really either finds something out or moves the case forward or has a big role. My nominee for this, I only have one, and it's actually the wife of or the woman where he's staying. So there's the local guy the local NAACP guy and his wife, Tad and his wife, and they're hosting Marshall in the town while he's there. And the wife is the one who initially says to Marshall, women don't just go around lying about this. And he's sort of taken aback by that. And then later, at the end of the movie, it circles back to, you were right. I had to figure out why she was lying about this. And so she's the non-lawyer. She's the whole, because it's really Sam and it's Marshall. And then, they're his buddy or his brother partner who tracks down the cop, who kind of does some legwork. But in terms of legwork, we don't really have much else. I don't know if you've got another one, but that was my Aaron Brockovich winner. Is the host? Yeah, that's actually the host mom.
No, that's actually mine too. So yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So you get that. Okay. We started to get a little taste there of the judge. So the Judge Chamberlain Haller Award. So the best moment of the judge. Man, there are several interesting. The judge is an interesting character in this because he does kind of go through a little bit of a transition from the beginning. I think it's a good place to let's hear him during the initial hearing to admit Marshall or not.
You filed an application to admit an out-of-state attorney?
Yes, Your Honor. Attorney Thurgood Marshall of the Maryland Bar.
I have the application in front of me, Mr. Friedman. Why do we need to admit this lawyer, Mr. Friedman? Does he have a long-standing relationship with the defendant?
No, Your Honor, but...
How long has he known him?
Not long, Your Honor, but...
Exactly how long?
Well, he met him for the first time a few days ago. However...
A few days ago? Well, then what possible reason could there be to admit him? You're a perfectly capable attorney, are you not, Mr. Friedman? You have tried cases before, haven't you?
Only civil cases, Your Honor. But Mr. Marshall is with the NAACP, and they are concerned that their defendant receive a fair trial.
So are we all, Attorney Friedman. So are we all. But he's not a member of our bar, is he?
No, he is not. However, Your Honor, Mr. Marshall is a respected attorney. He argued in the United States Supreme Court.
That has no bearing on this case.
Your Honor, may I be heard?
No, you may not. Court has heard enough and will rule. The court sees no legal requirement to admit out-of-state counsel in this case.
But, Your Honor...
However, the court not only wishes to be fair to all of the parties, but to maintain the appearance of fairness as well. Therefore, the court will allow Mr. Marshall to enter his appearance for the defense.
Respectfully.
His written appearance, Mr. Willis. Mr. Marshall may sit at counsel table. However, he may not speak.
Your Honor, I must speak for the client.
He may not speak, argue, or examine witnesses. If he violates this ruling, he will be held in contempt of court. And you as well, Mr. Friedman. You will conduct this case.
Me?
Yes, you. The trial will begin a month from today at 10 a.m. Court adjourned.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah,
that's our starting point.
Gut. Yeah, I guess it can only go up from there.
Yeah. Well, this goes back to what you were talking about, which is this sort of underlying theme of being heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as I'm watching it back now for the fourth time, I think, as we've prepared for this, watching it that time, I mean, it also has it has sort of a segregation, separate but equal kind of tinge to it, where it's like, we're gonna give you this, that's is good or whatever, but this, it sort of has this. He even said, make the appearance of
right
a fair trial,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's like
we're not gonna actually give you a fair trial.
Well, he said that too, but
he
kind of put more emphasis on an appearance of a fair trial.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So
that's the starting point for this judge. But as we said, it did get better because, like we already said, I mean, by the time that they've got the victim on the stand, alleged victim, he's allowing Marshall to speak without putting him in contempt, without throwing him in jail. He doesn't let it go on forever or anything like that, but he's definitely at least softened some, and there's a transition that happens there. But no, I mean, I think the other point, and I think you were starting to mention it earlier, where, and this is really one of the key scenes I think in the movie, is when the defendant is testifying and he gives his reason as to why he didn't initially tell the truth when he was arrested.
Yeah.
And that's where you get kind of the key judge moment, or one of them. So let's listen to that as well.
It was what you wanted.
If it's the truth.
Louisiana, you know what they do to me for being with a white woman like that? If they don't kill me right then and there. Soon enough, the others come, they drag me off, they tie me up, they cut off my manhood, and then I'd be swinging off the branch of some tree. So why'd I lie, Mr. Willis? Because the truth gets me killed. That's why.
I move the answer be stricken.
Long pause.
The answer will stand.
Man, that is a pregnant pause. that pause is past due. That pause is 9 months and 29 days and 23 hours and 59 minutes long. And it is due. When I first watched this, I legit thought that the movie had paused on its own. For a second.
I mean, that we should go back and count those seconds. But I mean, I
think I got 17. I think I got 17 seconds on it.
I mean, yeah.
But that's the moment. This is for me the Judge Haller Award moment. This is the moment where what the prosecutor is literally asking for is for what this witness, who is a black man, has said to be discounted, to be disregarded, to be erased from the record.
Right.
And so the judge, considering this, allows the answer to stand, which is another way of saying, I'm going to allow him to be heard.
Yeah.
And that's I give the award to that moment.
There is 100% no doubt that is the award winner for best judge moment of this movie. Mm-hmm. And it's powerful. I mean, and I'm sure listening to it, it's a little bit harder because you're not seeing his face and seeing him actually sit there with no sound for those seconds. And you don't know what he's going to say. I mean, the longer it goes, the longer you hope it's going to go that way. But man, a tough wait there, but ultimately does let that answer stand. So yeah, a good judge moment there. Best witness moment.
So I got a couple candidates.
Good.
One candidate was the doctor.
Yeah.
And that was it. So, the doctor gives the testimony, and he's being cross-examined by Friedman. And then Friedman starts asking him some questions. And he says, there wasn't skin under her nails or something like that. And then the doctor says, well, actually there was. Yeah. And then the whole thing just kind of falls apart. This is the I strenuously object moment of this movie.
The one question too many.
That's it.
As well.
Yeah. And that's why this is a candidate for me, but it's not the one that I chose, because I think the problem here is young lawyers listen. You lead on cross. You do not ask a question that you don't know the answer to, because inevitably it's going to cause some problems, going to open up a door, and a Mack truck's going to come driving through it, and you're going to be right underneath it. So yeah, just it's the one question too many. Not leading on cross.
Yeah, I was getting to it. There was some black skin under her nails. I was getting there. You hadn't asked the question yet. I was getting there. Splinters, rocks. Oh yeah, and the black skin that the wife didn't put in the records. Oh, that's right. Forgot about that one. Thank you for reminding me.
No further questions.
Yeah.
So that was one candidate. What's a candidate?
Well, so on that too, while we're on that, two things. One, the clip we had just heard before with the defendant Spell being able to give his reason why he didn't lie initially was another example on cross that the prosecutor screwed up.
Yeah,
shouldn't have asked that question.
True.
Same thing.
True.
He didn't know that thing was that answer locked and loaded. And Marshall wasn't sure he was going to say it either on the stand because he was saying, "Come on, tell him." But the prosecutor asked the one question to me as well. No, but again, and this happened multiple times. Again, we're in the 40s, so we don't have so many of the new, more recent protections and disclosure laws and all those things. But man, how many things did the prosecution have in this that the defense didn't have until literally in the trial? The judge is sitting there waiting for Sam to go over those medical records that they have to get turned over in the courtroom.
Yes.
And in fact, the prosecutor is trying to keep the defense from seeing those medical records even after they've been used on direct with that doctor and even after they've been referred to. And the judge overrules that objection and lets the defense look at it, albeit at the table with him with the gavel, kind of just waiting to start up trial again. And this is on the day with the doctor on the stand. So no time to go through the records, no time to look for anything ahead of time. So there was that. There was the initial statement from the victim that she gave to the police that we don't learn about. The defense doesn't learn about until much later as well. There were, I feel like, two more probably things like that where it's, you wouldn't have that in assuming people are doing what they're supposed to do now. You wouldn't have that now, but not that long ago you would have had some of that.
No, well, yeah, prior to 2014, there were still some jurisdictions where they would not turn over a witness statement until after that witness testified on the stand.
Right.
And so, Texas, 2014, that wasn't that long ago prior to the Michael Morton Act.
Right.
So, yeah, but trial by ambush, horrible.
Yeah.
And then I was relieved that the judge didn't roll his eyes and say, "Okay, hurry up, counselor," as, they're going through the medical records.
That's right. He was waiting.
Yeah.
He wasn't giving them a recess.
Right.
I don't think they asked for one, but he wasn't just giving them one, obviously. And so, but yeah, he didn't, as he had earlier in the trial and earlier in the movie, kind of tried to move them along.
Yeah.
A couple of different times. No, I honestly didn't think there were too many notable, kind of best witness moments necessarily. We did the defendant there just a little bit ago, which was, I thought, important. Obviously the victim is up there telling her false story. And the initial cop, I guess, with the pebbles, I think was the most comic relief that we had. But I didn't have one that I felt like deserved an award really for best witness this time. So I'm happy to go with. Did you say you had a second one? Or was that it?
I don't recall. I think that, well, the other one, yes. So that was the Truth Gets Me Killed, that moment that we played.
So I think that's, yeah. To me, that's the winner for the Colonel Jessup Award for Best Witness.
Yeah. So interesting observation. Have you noticed, as we're going through these movies, all the ones that have criminal themes, it's always the protagonists, the heroes of the movie are always the defendants. It's always the defense team, as opposed to, I think, in everyday life, we sort of tend to think that the prosecutors are the ones that are wearing the white hats.
Yeah.
But in these cases, in these plot lines, it's, these stories about some sort of prosecutorial overreach or abuse or abuse of discretion or something like that. And, the innocent accused. I just think that's, I don't know why that is. Obviously, Hollywood's probably tapped into some sort of formula that they're using to, attach people to the defendants, maybe put them in their shoes. But I just think it's interesting that we haven't seen a movie so far that has a prosecutor's perspective.
Yeah, it's a great point. We haven't. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about some of the movies that we maybe have upcoming and have had on the list to cover. And I offhand, I can't think of one where that changes. So it'll be.
We got Law and Order. And that's gone for 20 years.
No,
so I mean, that's good.
That's right. No, best juror moment. For me, I love the whole plot or line. That's a strong word for this because it's not a big part of the plot. But the whole little line with Mrs. Richmond, the forewoman, how she gets on the stand. She's the last one. Sam's ready to use a challenge on her because she's sort of connected to the victim. They're kind of similar in that they're attractive, probably in their 30s, women who do the socialite thing and do the Connecticut party thing. And she had this air of confidence about her and was really in control and sort of just, Sam was just an automatic. We got to challenge her and get her out.
Me too.
And so then here comes Thurgood to say you want to keep her. And as you kind of reflect on the way that he laid it out and described it, it made sense. But man, the prosecutor didn't get it either.
Yeah.
But it's because she liked him.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was basically he figured out. And when you watch it, now watching it 2-3 times, you see the way she responds to him, and this she took her glasses off, she sat back, she relaxed, she whatever, and kind of had more banter with him, and then also the fact that she was confident, she was a leader, and Marshall felt like he could get her and she could get the jury.
Yeah,
was his kind of line of thinking.
Yeah, that was incredible because
it was awesome.
Never would have picked her, which maybe I would have missed it.
And she was the 12th juror.
Yeah,
and when they accepted her, the prosecutor leans over to his second chair and says, "Am I missing something?" It was really good.
Yeah.
And then at the end, we circle back to her because she's now the forewoman. We don't know that.
Right.
They never, maybe you catch a glimpse of it. I didn't notice it where she's sitting, maybe where the foreperson would sit, but you don't ever know that she's been deemed the forewoman until she's reading the verdict.
Right.
And Mr. Foreman, what's the verdict?
Right.
The judge says.
Yeah.
She stands up. It's forewoman, Your Honor.
I know, man. Yeah.
And so her confidence again comes through. She did take the lead on the jury and obviously renders the not guilty verdict. So I mean for the juror award, Mrs. Richmond.
Yep. I agree.
She's great. Best client moment.
Tell you what the worst one was.
We can do hey, sometimes we got to go the opposite here. So we want a worse one. Let's do that.
Oh, lying to your lawyer.
Yeah, that's become a theme in the show.
Yeah. So if we can just take a moment here, I'd like to just take a moment for this segment that I call Talk to Your Lawyer with Callahan and King. When you go to the doctor and you say, "Doctor, I don't feel good," you wouldn't tell the doctor, "I don't feel good," but intentionally withhold some symptoms.
Right.
When you go to the dentist, you wouldn't say, "Hey, I'm feeling something's not right here," but you just take a gander and whatever looks good to you, you pick your tooth and just take it out. Why then would you go to your lawyer when your life is on the line? when you've been charged with a crime for which you could face life in the penitentiary and give only half the story, talk to your lawyer. If we're going to help you, we need to know everything. Don't let us find it out accidentally from the other side or trip over it somehow. We need the truth from you, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. That's why the attorney-client privilege exists. It's so that we can talk about stuff and it stays between you and the lawyer. And so if you're going to get the best representation that you can, you have to let your lawyer know where the bodies are. And that was Talk to Your Lawyer by Callahan and King.
And, since most of our listeners are lawyers themselves, this is for when you have your legal malpractice case. So, no, none of you are going to have that, I'm sure. Yeah, no. And, clients, you're voiding your warranty with Callahan and King when you don't tell them. That's right. Your warranty is no longer good. No, the thing I noticed, he had multiple attempts to plea out on this. And initially, because the husband, the family, were not wanting the thing to go on because it was embarrassing, and personal and hard on her too, the victim, alleged victim as well. So 20 years, I think, one time, then another time. I think there were maybe 3 plea bargain offers. And then at the very, very end, while the jury's out, the prosecutor is still trying to get a plea from him. And at that point, I think for me, that's the client moment I actually am most partial to, I think, because by then he's been ready to plea.
Right.
All the way through. He was ready to take 20 years. I'll be out in 14. For something he did not do.
Right.
And then by the end of, and really Marshall had to talk him out of it. Sam wanted him to do the deal too. And then at the end, Marshall's gone on to his next case.
Right.
The jury's out and the prosecutor comes back to Sam with one more plea offer, which is 5 years. You have to admit you did it and you lied on the stand. And he doesn't take it. Yeah. And even without Marshall there to kind of, coach him back to not take it. And so
props to him.
Good. I mean, yeah, I thought that was a cool moment. And
like
in the way that Sam handled that as well. A good moment.
I like that. I can't argue with that.
All right. We had quite a mentor-mentee relationship in Marshall, which leads me to remind you that each Monday is a Monday Mentors episode where we'll visit with a Texas lawyer with an established practice and ask them to share advice on how you can grow as a lawyer and reach your career goals. This past Monday, we talked with Fort Worth oil and gas litigator Troy Okrulik. And this Monday, we are going to be talking with Houston plaintiffs lawyer Matt Greenberg. So I hope you'll subscribe to the show and catch each and every one of these movie verdicts episodes and Monday Mentor episodes and everything we have going on here at Varsity Podcast Network. All right, let's get back to Marshall.
All right. I thought in our brief recess, it's where we might try to conduct our tests. Our Bechdel test.
Yes.
Start there.
Start with the Bechdel test. So.
Woman.
Yeah, we have to have a woman.
Talking to another woman.
Talking to another woman.
About?
Something other than a man.
And what do we think here?
Maybe.
It's really
this is a close cut. All right, so there's 2 candidates that I came up with. So number 1 is the conversation with the wife and the neighbor at church.
Okay.
Okay, so they're in the church.
So this is one of these scenes that you almost have always in these movies where the white neighborhood is concerned about the health and well-being of their other neighbors or their family. Yeah, and it's almost always in the church pews too. It seems like.
Yes.
Why is he doing this?
Yes.
Yeah. So okay. Good.
And the wife, by the way, hadn't been talking to the husband. She was upset with Friedman because he had taken the case, and so. Then this woman is talking to Friedman's wife in church, and then Friedman's wife begins to understand what Friedman is doing. And so then she comes out of the church and she kisses him on the cheek and she's talking to him again. But in the church, they have this conversation and it's about the case and about the publicity. Yeah. But they're also talking about Friedman.
Right.
So I don't think I want to give it. I don't think I want to give it to that conversation, but there's a piece of the conversation where the woman's the neighbor woman is talking about another family, and she says that other family fired Gladys, the helper.
Yes.
And the wife says, why did they do that? She's so sweet. Right. And it was because of the fear that had been stoked because of this trial, because Gladys apparently, being the help, was in the house, a minority in this, high tension, small community, and everybody's hearing about this case where the help is the perpetrator of the crime. Right. And so people begin to start firing their help. Yeah. And so in that situation, in that little moment, we do have two women talking about something that is not a man. And so
that's where I thought you were going first. So I think that qualifies.
Yeah. So I think we got it.
I think we have it there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got it there. Is that our first?
That's our first win.
What movie are we on? 5? 1, 2, 3, 4. This is movie 5.
Ding, 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 ding.
Oh boy. It took us 5 to get there. We finally got there. What about the Callahan test? It's not a golf ball.
The Callahan hair test. I think we got there. So such a thin slice though. Okay, so I took down all the different possible meetings that it could be. Yeah. Okay, so it's not the first meeting in the jail.
So this is, again, just recap.
Yes.
Black. Or is it black or person of color of any color?
Any color.
So person of color talking to another person of color about not a white person.
Right.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay. So first meeting in the jail. The question is, did you rape that white woman or that white woman? Yeah. So that's the whole conversation. So that one's out. Okay. They're at Tad's house, and there's a moment where I wanted to call him Langston Hughes, but they're talking about Marshall is pulling a book off the shelf, and it's Langston Hughes's book.
Yes.
and he's talking to Tad's wife.
Yes.
And he mentions the fact that he knows Langston.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it's like a 2-second moment of conversation.
I don't know. We may need to put some length to requirements on this.
It's a drive-by.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Oh, my God.
Another candidate we have at Tad's house, he says that the state of Connecticut wouldn't give him a law degree.
Right. But they would give him a driver's license.
Yeah. I kind of feel like, I mean, it's kind of talking about the man. It's sort of like, the oppression of the system, and it's the system that's being propped up by white superiority. But kind of the white man as a larger presence than a specific white man, obviously. Yeah. Close cut, though. So then,
but I think the other one, even though it was short, the other one you've still got. Okay, you have another one.
Yeah. So the bar. We have the woman that's hitting on Marshall.
Yes.
And she says men are men and women are women.
Yep.
Okay. And so they're not talking about a white person.
No, they're just, they're having a kind of bar conversation. Yeah.
Yes. And then the last, I think there's a couple more. There's at the jail again. They have a conversation about Struberg. But that's a white person. I think that they're talking about the event, but they're, in the course of that, they're talking about what the alleged victim did or didn't do or what happened. They talk about the plea bargain. And then we've got Marshall and Tad's wife, that moment that we talked about earlier, which is the Aaron Brockovich Award moment. And so I think between the Aaron Brockovich moment, the Langston Hughes moment, and the bar with the men are men and the women are women, I think that we're
covered.
Yeah,
between all of them.
If you take those 2-second intervals.
Did you mention the conversation actually with Langston at the lounge? What are they talk? They're at that lounge with the singer, and they're all kind of giving each other a hard time about, because Marshall doesn't think Langston's pulling his weight because he's just philosophical and not practical and not on the ground doing. And I guess that's sort of similar to your other conversation about the man, but
because they did spend some time talking about, it's this case, generally speaking, this is what you're, doing in the community. Yeah. So close shave, but if you take all these little 2-second moments and add them up, you get a good 8 seconds at least. So I think we're okay.
Okay. All right. Well, we're covered. We have crossed both hurdles there for the first time.
Yes. In the same movie.
Yeah. No, important, especially when we were literally 0 for 0 or 0 for 4 coming in on both, I think. So
here's another one where Tad introduces himself to Spell after the verdict and offers him a place to sleep for the night. So there's another 2-second moment.
Again, we have a lot of these little clips, these highlights where we finally passed the test.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite scenes in the movie? So I've got a few. I can start if you want.
Well, as opposed to scenes so much, there's these beats, like themes, ideas that are like keep coming up in the movie. So I lost count. I don't know how many times the word boy got used.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, we're north of
get your boy to.
Yeah.
What's wrong with your boy? Yeah.
This was a hard scene, but it was a short, succinct, but poignant commentary when Marshall goes to meet Spell. I think it's for the first time in the jail, and Friedman's outside the cell. Marshall walks in the cell, and then the guard closes the door and locks it, the cell door. So you got Marshall and Spell inside the jail cell, and you've got Friedman on the outside looking in. And there's this kind of moment, this exchange of glances where, it's clear, like these two, well, you've got a defendant and you've got an attorney, and it doesn't matter that the second one is an attorney. They're two black bodies, and they're being enclosed inside of this cell. And so I thought that was really profound.
Next to that, alongside that, I think, is when Eleanor's on the stand, the victim, alleged victim, and she's the prosecutor gets to the point where he asks her, "Do you see your attacker in the courtroom?"
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "Yes, I do. He's the colored man right over there."
Mm-hmm.
And then the prosecutor says, "For the record, which colored man?"
Yeah.
Because they're both sitting right next to each other. It's the same exact thing, I felt like, as what you were just describing in the jail cell.
Yeah, heavy.
They're two right there next to each other.
Yep.
And same thing.
Yeah. Heavy stuff.
It is. Some of the scenes that I had down, we already did the jury selection, the voir dire, and I liked that one. The hearing to get Marshall admitted was I thought an important scene to kind of set the stage for what we were in for. I actually like the initial car ride that Friedman and Marshall have together, where Marshall's kind of asking him the lay of the land, like, tell me about the prosecutor.
Yeah.
And they kind of go through, his deal and how he's sort of the golden boy and is being groomed to be senator and all the things. And then tell me about the judge, and the judge is the prosecutor's dad's former law partner, and the whole thing. And just, and they're just kind of almost laughing about it, but knowing they're in trouble from the beginning.
Yep.
And I think I think it was also important. We haven't really talked about this yet. I think it was also important that this movie was set outside of New York and Greenwich. This is not in the Deep South. This is not like the place where you think it would be.
Yeah.
I think that was by design. I mean, it's important.
Yeah.
To say.
No, absolutely.
And I mean, Marshall makes a speech at one point where it's out on the courthouse steps, and he's saying, you may think that you are kind of free of racism up here, but you just speak it in a different language, or I can't exactly what he says, but it's basically like, it's just a Yankee deal. It's a Yankee way of doing it, or something like that. So that was an important theme in this too.
I don't want to dip too far into inadmissible evidence, but one of the things that I looked at suggested that the NAACP was using this case and cases in the North as fundraising cases for they thought the South was where the real heavy oppression was happening. Yeah. And there was some sentiment by some people in the organization that's like, hey, it's happening here aplenty. It's just looks different. And that caused some tension in the organization. Yeah. Anyway.
So I think probably my favorite scene is, and I love the way that they did this, is the closing. Mm-hmm. Because you do get to hear Marshall argue.
Yeah.
Really, for the first time. And so let's listen to that.
Why would a woman like Eleanor Strubing consent? No. Encourage sexual relations with a man like Joseph Spell. Let me tell you why. Eleanor Strubing's story is nothing less than tragic. She is a respectable woman from a fine family. She attended the best schools. She went to church each and every Sunday. As the good book says, she was spotless as the Lamb of God.
She is spotless as the Lamb of God. And so a story is created.
A web of desperate lies filled with inconsistencies, absurdities, reasonable doubt.
He's dropping ink into the water.
Must prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt.
It must be a clear case. No scream for help all night long. Doubt. No call on the 4 family phones. Doubt.
And now Sam's dropping ink into the water.
No cry to the officer just a few feet away. Doubt. No rocks on a bridge. Doubt. 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 The doubt, my friends, is overwhelming.
And this is why you must find Joseph Spell not guilty.
I like that because, for the entire trial, we've basically had Marshall telling Sam what to do, what to say, and we've never gotten to hear him speak because of the way that the judges set this up. And I just really like how they did that at the end, where you get to now hear him, how he would do it if he were up there and making that argument to the jury at the end. And you just get to hear the way now they have teamed up and they are completely seamless, almost the two of them together making this argument.
Yep.
I just love that.
Yeah.
I mean, so no, that's my pick for favorite scene. But
yeah, and usually in lawyer movies there's like a powerful closing, and it's the rhetoric of the closing argument itself that's powerful. I think that what's powerful here is the combination of the two of them.
Yeah.
And you're seeing
100%.
how that came together. Yeah.
All right. Do we have any other best lines of the movie? We said a few earlier for our Yellow Highlight Award. I think we'd said the bigot line. Mm-hmm. The only way is to knock it down,
kick down the door. Yeah, another phrase that was commonly used that struck a note with me was, "You don't have to live here." That happened a couple of times.
So that was for Sam's kind of point of view in this, and sort of the idea of, this is my home, this is my practice, I have to live here, and you kind of have the advantage of coming into the city, trying this case, and then leaving and not having to deal with the consequences of what I'm going to have to deal with when you leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason why it resonates with me is not because I have that. It's not that I can relate to that. I have found myself in more than one occasion, the stir up of problems. The one that is progressive in a culture that is trying to maintain the status quo. Yeah. And that is a commonly articulated line that you don't have to live here. After you don't have to deal with this, or this is how we've always done this, and so this is going, if I do X, Y, and Z, it's going to have these far-reaching consequences on other situations. And I think that I'm only now starting to realize how much of a gift it is to have, difficulty sometimes thrust upon you such that you have to push yourself out there and you have to get used to carrying a certain amount of weight so that the next time you have to carry weight, it's not as heavy.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know how else to articulate it. I've heard that from people that I love and respect. And so I understand the sentiment. It's also frustrating to me if I was in the position where I had the opportunity to be relaxed in an environment and not be an advocate for justice, then maybe it would be very tempting to hold on to that comfort.
Right.
But I guess the great thing is that Friedman realizes that comfort, at first it was these people, and then he realizes that, I'm in this group too. I mean, the juror that refers to him as a Jewish person.
Absolutely.
And then, later on, he's even paired with Marshall, as the newspaper was saying, Friedman and Marshall of the NAACP.
Right.
And so I guess it's maybe I don't know, maybe it's because it's the precipice of that moment before he's realizing, no, I've got to invest in this too. I'm in this too. In for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that was one that came back to me.
A line that stuck with me that's not a great line and didn't hold up, obviously, but I thought was an interesting line is in the same vein of what we were just talking about, where Sam tells Marshall, "No one's going to remember you were ever even here."
Mm.
And they're having a fight. They're having an argument about this exact topic.
Yeah.
And when you leave here, like, no one's going to remember you were here.
Mm.
And that led to a whole, devolving of that conversation. But obviously, not the way it was going to turn out.
Yeah. And that's in that moment, that is almost the most insulting thing that he can say.
Yeah.
Because the very reason that he's there is to make an impact that's
right.
lasting.
That's right.
And so, the idea that, he's going to go through here and no one's ever it's going to make zero difference.
Right.
That was the hardest punch that he could have delivered.
Yep. That's right. The one other problem I kind of had with this movie is and without totally mapping this out, it did seem like the sequence of events in terms of when Sam especially, figured out or were alleging that this was a consensual encounter rather than a rape.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing it at a couple of different places with the doctor, one, which was early on in the trial, and then also with her. But it's only after Marshall has that conversation at the bar with the woman who's hitting on him that he kind of has a ding in his mind that, the only thing that makes sense now is that it was consensual.
Right.
But it's kind of been coming the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little bit off, I feel like.
Yeah.
In that, is that your theory of the case all the way through? It seems like it sort of was, but then it's presented as like a light bulb moment, like 3/4 of the way through.
Right.
And not to step on inadmissible evidence, but it was the defense the whole way through.
Right.
Yeah. So to set this up, the movie up was to have this defendant lying to Marshall and Friedman through the first half about that he never touched her at all, so they didn't have sex at all. So, but that wasn't the true story. So I think they kind of missed some of that sequencing in trying to add that wrinkle into the movie version.
Yep, I agree.
So that was one problem I had.
I had the same thought.
Yep.
Vox had a good article that critiqued the movie, and here's a quote from it. It says, "Curiously, Marshall bounces around from being a straight-ahead courtroom drama to something like a buddy comedy, and the result feels mostly confused."
Yeah.
And again, this kind of goes to that tone and the swagger. I mean, I think that what made the movie bearable, if this was just, you know, A Time to Kill again, or The Green Mile again, you know, it'd be too much. So I think that the pluckiness did help the movie a ton, but it was also one of the things that I had difficulty with.
Sure.
Another critique, I don't know if it was from that article or if it was a different one, but one thought was that even though the film is titled Marshall, Marshall doesn't seem to be the centerpiece.
Right.
And I think that going back to, you know, our earlier discussion about, you know, it's the teamwork and how this becomes more than just about the one man. It becomes about, you know, this team working together, and then later on a legion of other attorneys that are working with Marshall and the NAACP. I think that that didn't bother me so much. I was okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, and we did talk about that a little bit, that, I mean, that you don't get to kind of see him in full stride and action as a lawyer, except for kind of behind the scenes. And then it isn't kind of a, you know, birth to grave bio either.
Right.
We're seeing kind of one I mean, it's more about this case almost than it is, his specific life. I was going to mention, because I didn't do this in the beginning as I normally do, apologies for that, but this is a 7.2 on IMDb, so very solid score. It's not at the top of the legal movies that we've done, but I think some of the things that we've just now been talking about are some reasons why it's not at the top, in addition to the fact that, it didn't do well at the box office. There were a few holes in this movie, not to mention that it is a tough subject. And so you were talking about before, a lot of times in our busy worlds and lives and work and kids and stuff, it's always, I think, an extra effort to watch a difficult movie versus just some easy to consume, comedy or something that's lighter or whatever. And so it makes some sense, I guess, as well.
Which, I mean, if you think about it, isn't that the point of the movie? I mean,
100%. That's why it's important to watch.
Yeah,
no, that's why I wanted to do it. I mean, absolutely.
It's comfort. Who doesn't like comfort? I mean, who chooses discomfort? I mean,
sure.
But yeah, it's apparently this scored 84% Rotten Tomatoes audience score.
Yeah. No, and I was trying to pull that up just a second ago. It is, I think, a overall critically scored movie, and relatively speaking, and then within our lawyer movies, we've done a lot of the much higher ones, but this will wind up being a relatively solid one from an overall critics standpoint and audience standpoint for those that saw it, which is not that many.
Mm-hmm.
All right, inadmissible evidence. I didn't have a whole lot here. We talked about that this was a real case built on the defense that it was consensual. That was from the beginning, rather than here it was kind of thrown in halfway through. That gag demonstration that we already talked about did actually happen during the trial. And let's see, what else did I have for this? What else did you have for inadmissible?
The closing argument was actually really similar in the movie as it was to the actual closing argument from what I read. So there's a really great article. Hopefully I can get you the link and maybe we can put it in the show notes.
For sure.
It's from LegalAffairs.org, and they're talking about Marshall's story. And apparently, so this is a direct quote. So it says, talking about the closing argument, Friedman skewered Strubing's fantastic story and evasive answers her resort to tears, her antics on the stand, her resort to every possible trick in the cards. But looking at the all-white jury, he knew that discrediting Strubing was too risky. He had to offer the jury a way to affirm Strubing's social standing and still acquit Spell. In a move that the Baltimore Afro-American described as brilliant, Friedman appropriated the prosecutor's rhetoric, explaining how he overcame his own doubts to believe in Spell's innocence. Quote, "They had this improper relationship all through the night. Joseph sees nothing wrong with it. The formality of marriage and divorce means nothing to him. But not to Miss Strubing. She has moral fiber and dignity. She knows what she's done wrong." So Strubing has plunged into the water with thoughts of killing herself, Friedman surmised, but as soon as she hit the water, she was a changed woman. She was a good swimmer, and she simply couldn't drown. So the way that the closing just very accurate, but I loved the way that he sort of reversed. He did sort of demonize Spell in one sense, in that, he didn't have indiscretion, but it didn't cut against the idea of consent.
Right.
And so, I thought that was great. Did some more digging, some other things that I looked into. So apparently in the actual case, Spell confessed to having consensual sex.
Right.
After 16 hours of interrogation.
After the 16 hours of interrogation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that turned into, in the New York Times and every other publication, that turned into confessed to raping her and trying to kill her. The New York Times actually reported on its front page that Spell admitted to attacking Strubing and hurling her off the bridge.
Man.
Some more info here. So that case from Oklahoma that begins.
Oh, yeah. Let's go back to that.
Yeah, so that's Lyons v. Oklahoma. So that actually happened. That case actually happened too.
Yeah.
And apparently, I want to say, Lyons v. Oklahoma is remembered for Marshall's skillful cross-examinations, for the jury's surprising decision to give the defendant a life sentence instead of the death penalty. And for Marshall's bitterness after the Supreme Court affirmed the defendant's conviction despite overwhelming evidence of his innocence. Thurgood Marshall told Juan Williams, his biographer, that the press coverage of Spell's arrest prompted grim laughs at the NAACP. This is great. Okay, so this is a quote. "He was supposed to have raped this woman 4 times in one night," Marshall recalled. "All I got to tell you is that when the story got in the newspaper, all the secretaries, all of them, came and said, 'Hey, defend that man. We want to see it.' 4 times? Ha, ha, ha.
Oh,
4 times in one night? Yeah, bring him in here. Let us see him. I told him, get out of my office."
Oh, no.
So it's just... But it's a valid point, which is, just the mechanics of like, how did this happen? But
right.
Apparently that was an ongoing joke.
Oh, man.
In the trial, so the original trial was 7 weeks from the point of arrest to verdict. That it was only 7 weeks.
Yeah.
12 hours of deliberation for the jury. And then shortly after she died in 2000, Miss Strubing's step-grandson married an African-American woman, and Ellie Strubing had been invited before her death, but she said that she was unable to attend the wedding. The budget for the case for defending Mr. Spell was $107. And in 1941 money, it looks like that is almost $2,000 in today's terms.
So they had plenty of money for the defense. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. All right. Well, as we're wrapping up here, final thoughts.
Yeah, closing arguments.
Yeah, closing. It's, it was, like I said, I think one of the things that I enjoyed about it, I guess, and this kind of goes back to just my, this goes back to kind of my sports background and some other things where I just have, I always have an appreciation for and like to see depictions of the absolute best doing their thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like it means something when I reflect even on times where I got to go, you know, and see LeBron in person or Kobe in person when they were in the, you know, Kobe was in his prime, and just other just top performers. And it doesn't have to be athletes. I mean, you know, musicians, artists, whatever, seeing incredible people at the top of their game. And so one of the things I did enjoy, even though we didn't get to see a ton of it, is I did get to kind of see this lawyer at the top of his, you know, this outstanding all-time lawyer at the top of his game. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I took away from it that I don't think we'd really touched on yet. I just really enjoyed about it. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, the other part is just thinking about, I mean, even with some of the things we talked about. So this is 1940. We're still, you know, over 2 decades before we get into the civil rights movement. We're still 45 years before we get Batson. We're still 60-something years before we get full disclosure from prosecutors, or supposed to be. I mean, this is happening. There's still so much time to go by before the progress happens that you're seeing here, just the very initial stages of.
Yeah, no, it's great. For me, there is, I think, we are programmed as humans to desire to be heard and to be seen and to be relevant. And I think that minorities, not just racial minorities, but just other minorities, oppressed members of society, even more so, struggle with the need to be heard, to be seen, to be relevant, to be recognized. This movie, in terms of when it was released and even, you know, now its availability today on Prime, it couldn't be more timely, I don't think, in our nation. We had, you know, leading up to the release of this movie, you had August 2017 was Charlottesville, where we had, you know, all the white supremacists in the Gap khakis and polo shirts with the tiki torches, you know, and all that. And then in September of 2017, we had the St. Louis protests that turned into riots. Right. And then in October 13th of 2017, this movie is released. So just boom, boom, boom. Yeah. And this is a movie that, had it been made 10 years ago, it would have been A Time to Kill. It would have been The Green Mile. It would have just sort of blended into the background of the unjust, you know, system and fighting the system and that kind of thing. But when you see how there's this partnership, right? So it's not, Marshall didn't just go down or go up to Connecticut by himself with all the swagger and just, you know, hit the home run. You know, it had to be done with someone else that took up the cause. Yeah. And they both benefited from that. And then, you know, they were obviously able to make this huge impact. At the same time, the movie, I think, is difficult for me just because of the topic, that's fine. But there's also sort of, if I had to describe it, it feels a little bit like a blues song. And in fact, the movie starts with a blues song. And I can't remember his name right now, but there's an author that wrote Blue Like Jazz. It's one of my favorite authors. I just can't. I'm just having a moment of brain block. But in the book, he talks about how jazz doesn't resolve, and he didn't like jazz until he learned how to listen to it. And this is a movie that in some regards doesn't have a resolve. You know, this isn't the movie doesn't end with, and then, you know, the Supreme Court said X, Y, and Z. You know, we didn't see Brown versus Board of Education happen. Donald Miller, thank you. Blue Like Jazz. we didn't get to see the home run. When you watch when you watch football, you get to see someone cross the line, and there's this sort of cathartic release of this is the moment, or someone dunks a ball on basketball court. And this is, this everything sort of builds up, and then it's just released in this one moment. You don't get that release here. It's, before the verdict even comes back, Marshall's on a train, and he's on to the next destination, and he's fighting the fight again. And I think that one of the things that's so hard about that for me, watching it, and also what's difficult about being a criminal defense attorney is you're ultimately seeking balance. You're not seeking this huge cathartic release dunk, cross across the 1 yard line, to use a football analogy, or home run. Something is off balance, something's gone awry, something's gone amiss, and you're trying to restore it to the way that it was. And so your win is just, this is how it should be. Not, this grand apex that you've climbed. And so that's, but nevertheless, I mean, there's beauty in that. And we do that for, to ensure that we are, standing in the gap for our clients and for those that don't have that voice and don't have the representation and don't feel heard, seen, relevant. So, good movie, hard movie. Gotta watch it. Still relevant.
Absolutely.
So should we talk about gavels?
Yeah, let's give it some gavels. So, as a quick recap, now that we've done a few of these, we are right now with A Few Good Men with our combined scores. A Few Good Men now leads our 4 movies we've done with 96.5 gavels. My Cousin Vinny, close second at 94. Witness for the Prosecution, which we did last time, comes in at 89, and then The Lincoln Lawyer at 84. Those are our combined scores. That's usually you on the high end and me on the low end. In fact, I think that's true.
You're bringing me down.
I think that's true on all of these. So on this one,
come on, come on,
where are you?
Step it up. No, you. I want the Russian judge to
give
me a 10.
No, here's what happens. Whatever number I say, you do the Price is Right thing and just go one over me.
$1, Bob.
Yeah. You're 74. Well, then 76. We got to knock him out. So let me think here. Okay, so
I'll go.
No, okay. I'll go for it. If you're ready.
So now we're like at the 4-way stop sign. Like, no, I got.
I know. Yeah. I'll go.
No, please.
You order.
I'm gonna go with an 80.
Oh, I am gonna beat you this time.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I mean, not by much, but 82 was the number I had.
Okay.
So that's a combined 81.
Rubbing off on me.
Yeah. I knocked you out finally. No.
Said knocked you out.
All right, Robert. Thanks for doing this, man. It's fun.
Absolutely.
Enjoyed it. And thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Hey, rate, review.
Yeah,
share.
Subscribe, rate, review, all those things. Share it. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks.